So hi, in the previous video I showed several ways of building a rootfs for Alpine, and now we'll show a more organized way that will actually use a generic mechanism for fetching and unpacking the system. And I will show again how to modify some things in the file system. So if you want to write organized layer directories and add this code, you can do it. But this gives you actually in like very few lines of code, it gives you the entire recipe of how to do that for multiple architectures and so on. So before starting, I just want to show the output. We can see here indication that we have an inittab of Alpine because it would look for OpenRC. And here I put a username root, password, the PscgBuildOS. You'll see how I put it here. We have a login on TTY as 0. We can see that the host name was set. Okay, we can see that the file name is etc hostname, and we can see that it was set because we put it in the inittab. Here we call hostname -f. Also, we put this TTY as 0 line. Before there is a comment, and with VT100 that we replaced with Linux. And because it's Linux, and because we added a couple of packages, dropbear and cmatrix, then because it's Linux, cmatrix will be green and not like a gray like on the other one. So let's quickly show the code and we'll conclude it very, very, very fast. So what have we done? What did we do? So what we did is this. We actually we overridden some of the generic functions as follows. We have the prepass. It gets PscG distro name build rootfs prepass, which calls inittab that I will cover in a second. Do fetch that will fetch a tarball, and do unpack that will unpack a tarball to a root of our choice that in the generic mechanism, unless it's overridden, this do fetch will go to a downloads dir variable, and do unpack will go to an unpacking dir variable. So what are the variables and how they're set? We put it in int and env. Usually it would be in a configuration file, but in this case I put it in the same file, so it will be a very concise lecture. Then what we have here is we check what is the architecture. We make a little adjustment because many times it happens also in Debian when we change when we want to build for an architecture, there are different flavors of it, and not all distros handle all architectures. For example, by default, RISC-V is not handled by Alpine. And Alpine provides several different root file systems depending on whether we have hard floating point support or not, and so on. So we do a switch case by the arc and also set the arc edge case. And the tarball that we download will be 319 as we did in the previous video demonstration for x86, but now we also actually take the right tarball from the right place. We are going to also provide the correct SHA-256 so that if we download something and doesn't match, then we will be able to fail the build. This allows us to verify integrity. And we will provide what is the name of the tarball and where to store it by specifying fetch local target path. Unpack test path will be where we're going to untar the tarball. And post unpack command is something that is optional that enables us to do some things after the unpacking. So what I've done here was searching for the line that has like the console dev TTY, which would be TTY S0 or TTY MA0 or whatever. And we are going to replace it with another line, and the other line would have, instead of VT100 here, it will have Linux as the terminal. It will not be commented out. This is why we have the login. So this is great, but as you can remember from another video, then the rootfs does not provide default user and password. User would be root, but default password. So I will also set that. So recapping this, we have the pre-population that we'll call do fetch and do unpack. And in order to have the variables correctly and automatically handled by our build system, we're initializing them. The other things are the add rootfs layers that is for build distro that I'll cover soon. And the last thing will be a post pass. So it's the functions that are generic. We call it for everything and all is well. So what we have in the add rootfs layers is as follows. You could put it, if you get experienced with it, in some organized layers here, if you add more packages and so on. but this is an excellent reference for you because it's very concise. So first thing we see is we're going to go ahead, echo the version file, which is like our version file, PscgOS release. We're going to set the host name to the distro. This is why we had Alpine OS. We're going to set the password. And in order for us to be able to install packages, we're going to set a name server, in this case to Google. Now we're going to, later on this function, we're going to also add packages before packaging the image. So it will need to resolve it with etcresolve.conf, and Alpine does not provide a default one, so we're going to need to put it ourselves. Last thing in the first function here will be routing to the target, seeing if we already called this construct hostname-f, and if not, putting it. This will prevent us from doing a very common mistake of adding to a file at build time and then having the same line 5 billion times over and over again. It's unnecessary, okay? All right, so the second one, we again provide, we call both of them with the rootfs parameter here, rootfs here. Could call with other things as well, but we're not covering the overlays. Now we finished covering it. We did a really good job on it. So it receives the target, and just in case we want to make sure that we will not modify things on the real thing. So long story short, what we're going to do is root and call apk add packages. Now I did a cut, and that's it. That's enough. But if you just do that, you will see that it's very, very, very slow. If you use the same architecture, which I will do later perhaps, but I will not record it anymore, then if you put a device node for dev-null, that by default Alpine will not be, and especially if you have a tempfs mounted as temp, you will see that the installation will go much, much, much faster. So this is why I do this, okay? If something goes wrong, I'm just marking that there is error so that I can later unmount anyhow, okay? And if things went bad, I'm going to fail the build. So this is it. We did these phases. Functions are pretty much the same. We have the source distro config, specific configs, there's nothing but specific. Pre-pass, and there we do our mechanism, but now we use the generic fetch and unpack mechanism for system. We even showed you how to do a post unpack command running, which is a very neat and powerful trick. And we build, we add the rootfs layers. I call it layers because if you create your own distro, you may want to make it more organized and not everything in the same script and call, okay, I want this layer, I don't want this layer, etc. And the last thing here would be the rootfs post pass, in which we are going to clean up the downloads of the APK of the Alpine packages. So it's going to be here under var-cache APK, and we just remove it. So having said that, this is all, and you're good to build your own Alpine distro in a very concise and effective way, and for several different architectures. Just don't forget to provide the arc equals your architecture before building. Thank you for watching.